Oh yeah. No, I am simultaneously holding rage and disgust and loathing and joy and pleasure and sadness and concern. I think I have all of those in this moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And they all have a place at the table. It's really interesting how we have these very raw, very real, very visceral emotions, and then we start judging ourselves about them. Now we have emotions about emotions, and that even gets even more confusing sometimes around how to be in an emotion. We get into our heads, and it's something that's happening in our bodies.
Hi there. Welcome to the Empowered and Embodied Show. I'm Kim Romain.
And I'm Louise Neil. We're two transformational coaches who are also fellow travelers on the path of growth and self-discovery. And we're inviting you along for the ride.
That's right. We're right here in the trenches with you, navigating the ups and downs of life. And each week we'll be sharing our own experiences, bringing you conversations with amazing guests, and exploring insights and strategies that have helped us find more clarity, confidence, and ease in our lives.
And trust us, we do not have it all figured out. We're learning and growing right alongside you.
So if you're ready to rise above the chaos, doubt, and confusion that sometimes life throws our way,
and step into a more empowered and embodied version of yourself,
then you're in the right place. Let's get started.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Empowered and Embodied Show. I am one of your giggly co-hosts today, Kim Romain, joined as always by my other giggly co-host.
That's me. I'm Louise. And we are giggly. We are because we're happy today.
Yeah.
I think we're happy today. Well, but we can hold two things at once, right? We can hold two things at the same time. And so some sad happened earlier when we first started talking today. And here we are laughing, and it doesn't negate the sadness that we felt earlier today.
Oh yeah. No, I am simultaneously holding rage and disgust and loathing and joy and pleasure and sadness and concern. I think I have all of those in this moment.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
all
Yeah. And they all have a place at the table.
yeah. Well, and I think we often think we cycle through one emotion at a time, or we think that, right, we're feeling something, we don't want to get stuck there. Or we're feeling something we don't know, and this might not be the term somebody uses, but we don't know how to mobilize it. We don't know how to move through it. And so we focus on one specific emotion. I was with a client earlier today, lots of anger, lots of rage, all good reasons why that person has that anger and that rage, and would like hint at things that brought joy into their lives. And when I tried to get them to kind of see that they could hold both things, they were the way they're experiencing is very binary right now. They're just not at a place where they can see either, like see both together. It has to be either or. And I know I've experienced that in the past as well, when things just feel so big that I can only feel this. There's no space for anything else. And yet the reality is the other stuff was still existing. I didn't have access to it, and my client didn't have access to it today.
Yeah. Yeah, all of that comes and goes, right? Like it's really interesting like how we have these like very raw, very real, very visceral emotions, and then we start judging ourselves about them. And then now we have emotions about emotions, and that even gets even more confusing sometimes around how to be in an emotion, how to be able to like know that it's going to pass, that you're going to be able to process it and move through it, and that it's still honor it all at the same time, right? And we get into our heads, and it's something that's happening in our bodies.
Yeah. And that rush to get through anything that may be a quote
Yeah,
unquote negative emotion.
yeah, yeah.
Hurry up and get this done.
Yeah, yeah. I was talking to someone today who got laid off a whole month ago, and hasn't really told anyone. in their network. And the number of emotions they went through in the 10 minutes they were talking to me was phenomenal to see, right? There was anger and grief and sadness, and then some hope and some, ability and time and like all of these things flooding out. And then there was also embarrassment and some shame and all of those things too. And it was in a short span just to hear that conversation and see that person try to process through all of that. I felt really honored to witness it and to point that out. It's like, yeah, there's all kinds of things that are happening that all have a place. Yeah, it all has a place at the table.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So growing up, I was from so many different angles, essentially told you're too emotional. It's too much. You need to just be happy. You need to just, right? Not have all these emotions, not share all these emotions. Don't talk about emotions. Don't do these things with your emotions publicly. And publicly meant with my parents, let alone anybody else outside my house. If you're gonna have those things, and what was so funny, right? My mom and my dad are like two very different people. And so I was getting the message two different ways. One was like, shut her down. And the other is, let's just gloss it over and put fairy dust on it and make everything okay again. And once everything's okay, then we can go have a good time. And it was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. What if I wish I'd had this language when I was younger. What if I just wanted to experience my emotions? What if I just wanted to be fully human, and the way that I experience emotions, I get to just experience those emotions. You and I experience emotions differently. My husband and I experience, like, all of us experience it differently. Why is there a way that it's wrong to experience our emotions? Like, why have we done that?
Well, there's so much fear around our emotions. Don't you think? Like, I think all of that misunderstanding is driven by fear. Fear that we're going to get trapped inside of an emotion, or fear that emotion is contagious. And it is like, and it can be, but I think there's a lot of fear wrapped up in that. And I think that fear, although has come from the outside, because as babies, we're not afraid to show any kind of emotion. Right? This is a learned behavior. But now we've taken something external and we've very much internalized it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it definitely feels like, I mean, I talk about conditioning all the time. It definitely feels conditioned upon us that it was conditioned upon our parents, it was conditioned upon their parents, right? And so growing up in the United States, right? Different, live in Canada now, and you can speak from a Canadian perspective on this. Growing up in the United States, it was founded on puritanical ideology, right? And of being human means being the highest aspect of human, being closest to God, meant that you didn't experience these base emotions. And that was, even though it was a couple of centuries ago, that was very much still baked into, and I think still is baked into the what it's like to grow up in the United States, what it's like to live in the United States, is that complexity between, we want you to have the freedom to be yourself, right? Land of the free, wave that flag, and then also, but not too human, because you have to rise above that. You have to be better than the baseness of your humanity. And that's a mind fuck, but it's also really hard to know how to trust my own self within my own emotional experiencing of my life and the world. Because you said the word fear, but that's just another emotion,
Sure.
right? So I'm like, sure.
Sure. Fear is one of those emotions I believe that's easily understood. See, this is this whole like head body thing that we go back and forth around. And you mentioned like trust, right? And self-trust. And this whole thing about like how we name emotions, how we like start to like explain them to ourselves, and all of this is all like heady stuff, right? And it's us trying to make sense of logically, scientifically, with our brains, what's happening in our bodies. And although the two are obviously connected,
There's this thing called a throat.
right? So they're obviously connected, and yet they operate so differently on so many levels. There's similarities, but let's talk about differences right now. And so like there's all of this miscommunication that starts to happen, right? Self-judgment about these emotions, even about like where they come from, or why am I feeling that way? Or like I said, let's have an emotion about an emotion because now it's scary, right? So now there's fear around being happy, fear around being too sad. So I really think it's interesting, like what you were talking about is like, yes, there's these cultural aspects that absolutely have influenced us. There's generational, right? DNA that floats through our bodies that is around our trauma and what we bring forward, what we've learned from our parents and what they learned from their parents and their parents and their parents. It is all compounded. So it's external, yes, right? These ideologies of like who we are as North Americans, as well as like what we carry genetically from our past and what we've been taught around like who we are. And emotions are all part of that because emotions are very much an expression of who we are. And so I think it gets all messed up sometimes around that. And what we're left with at the end of it is that I'm in a place where now I can't really trust myself. I can't trust myself to have an emotion. I can't trust myself to speak into it in the moment, or like, that's what I see. Like it's all come to this head here, right? Of us being maybe now more curious around like, why is that?
Yeah, it's interesting because I was having a conversation earlier with somebody who I see everything now in right the human design chart, how energy flows. It just to me, it's a great way to really see how our emotions fuel different aspects of us or not, how our thoughts fuel different aspects of us or not. And as we were talking, I saw the chart of one of my clients who I was talking to earlier come up, and it what's so interesting is when we are so heavily emotionally driven, we crave the head part so that we can trust ourselves more deeply. But when we have the head part, when we're naturally connected through our logic circuits, we rarely crave that my understanding because I'm not built that way. But in talking to people who have the logic circuits, that's a heavy part of their design. They're not craving information through more visceral or emotional pathway. They're like, nope, I got the logic. And I feel that that's where it's hard for us to trust these more emotional or physiological responses that we have in our body because emotions really right we're having a physiological response that brings up a feeling, not an emotion, but a feeling, right? The emotion is the word that we're giving a sensation that is in our body. It's sadness, it's anger, it's love. It's a sensation. And yet, when we don't have that logical component, why am I feeling turned on in this moment? I've had those conversations with some of my clients who are like, this is really weird. Why am I in this situation? And it's actually turning me on. And it's like, does it matter? Why you're having that feeling? I don't know that it does. I feel like when we have when we have those logical circuits, we're not looking for an emotional or sensory, there we go, sensational, sensory understanding of it. But when we're having a sensory or emotional response to something, we want a logical response to it. I think that's cultural. I think that's we're conditioned to think that the logical is more important than the emotional and the sensorial. But as you were just saying, they're two pieces of the same puzzle, but they're not the same pieces, right? They
Yeah. Yeah. I think we do need both. I think too when, as you're talking, I'm very much one of those people and I'm actively trying to lean more into like, I don't need to know why. Like I do have this, like you were talking, I was like, I do have this desire for even more information but it's interesting because it's information that comes from here, that comes from my head. And instead, I'm trying to be more intentional about, well, I can get more information from my body. Right. And it still is feeding me information. There's still lots of stuff going on, but how do I have to label it? Right. Maybe I can describe it instead of labeling it. Maybe I can, right? Like, but there is still a need to, like, there's still, I can't turn that little voice off in my head that's constantly searching for information, but I can control where it's seeking information. Um, and helping me do that. But you're right, like, there is this desire to deeply understand, and yet that's not deeply understanding.
It's not. It's because it's cognitive awareness. It's not deeply knowing, right? Deep knowing comes from just knowing. You don't have to give words to it. You don't have to give an explanation to it. You just know. There's no logical place that you can point to and say, this is where I learned it from. And so therefore I know it's true. You just know it's true versus that cognitive piece where it's like, yes, I can go through the file of facts that's in my brain, pull out the folder that has the information and tell you, oh, I read this in this book, or I heard it in this lecture, or I know that it's true because here. It's very different. Our brains they're great for inquiry. They're great for inquiry, for asking the questions. So I don't think it's a bad thing to say, ooh, I'm experiencing a sensation. That sensation, let's say I'm going to give it the word sadness. Okay. I'm feeling sad. What caused that sadness? I don't know. I'm just feeling sad. That's where I feel like we have a crossroads. We can either say, I'm okay with not knowing and I can move on. I can say, I'm sad. How do I honor that sadness? What does that sadness need from me in this moment? Or we can go down the path of, but I have to understand and I have to investigate everything until I have clarity before I can move on. And that's going to be different for all of us. For me, I don't need that investigation quite as deeply as most other people. You do. You're also designed that way, right? I've looked at all your different charts. You are 100% designed for that investigation. I'm designed for the inquiry. I'm designed to ask the questions, but I'm also designed to just keep asking questions, but I don't need to have the answer. I'm okay without the answer.
Yeah, I'm trying to find different places to get the answer, but that doesn't mean I'm still not investigating, right? And I'm also practicing delaying investigation.
Why? Why would you do that for yourself?
Well, especially around emotion, because I
Okay.
don't want to dishonor. There's something about an emotion like that, like I'm gonna, like, there's chemically something changed in my body that creates a feeling different than the feeling I had right before. Like, I
Mhm.
could feel it in my body. I could feel the change. And so I want to honor that without trying to say, like, so why am I sad? You brought up sadness because we were sad earlier.
Mhm.
And so it was like, just want to be just there. Right. And just like, I don't need to push through it. I don't need to do anything. And for the next 60 seconds, 90 seconds, I actually don't even need to know why. I might need to know why it happened later. I want to unpack that. I want to understand that. But in the moment, I do just want to I want to honor that because my body's telling me something, right? It's feeding me a signal. And so I just want to be there and then look at it after, like, with a different perspective.
Well, what I'm hearing you say is that in that process, you trust your body to give you information that will help you fill in the blanks later when you go back to investigate. But you trust your body enough in the moment to say, okay, I'm feeling sad. I'm going to trust that you feel sad right now. I don't need to berate you or make you feel shameful or make you feel wrong for feeling sad, I'm going to create space for not just allow, and like that would be a typical word we would put in there, but not that. It's I'm going to create space for you to be sad, to you, so that my body, myself, I can just experience whatever's happening. And then once that happening is done, then I can go back and trust myself to know that I will investigate for as far and as deep as feels good to me, but that I can also trust myself. Notice I've said it now 3 times, trust myself to know when it's time to stop.
But
That's a whole lot of self-trust.
sure, and that's coming with practice. Like, it's not something that I just do, right? There's this very intentional, because I catch myself, right? Like, why am I sad? I'm sad because of this, or I'm sad because of that. And it's like, but I don't need to explain it. I want to honor it. And this is like, I'm developing, I think for myself, this is like a self-awareness, right? That I want to be doing something differently. And so now I'm practicing doing something differently. And it doesn't always happen, but there's an awareness there of like, oh, yeah, like let's just be, and then we'll figure out the rest of it later. But that's what I want to be. That's what I want to be bringing into my whole life, right? Is to not get stuck in any one thing, not get stuck. Is to like, is to do, is to be, is to move through the stuckness, whatever that is. And then we can look at it later. We can look at it like, why was I stuck? Why was I sad? Why was I, right? I have the power to do that. I'm not going to lose anything by like allowing the moment to be the moment. I have this great opportunity to investigate later.
And I think that's scary for a lot of people. I think it's really scary, right? When they're experiencing imposter syndrome, right? That's a feeling. That's an emotion, really, right? I feel inadequate in this moment.
Uh-huh.
That's an emotion. When they're feeling that, they immediately start to take action on it. What do I need to do? And the other action, or another action, is to berate themselves, to continue to feel less than. I can't do that. So then they pull themselves away and they spin in this place for a while, versus I feel inadequate in this moment. That's a real feeling because this is scary. This is a growth edge. This is, whatever language you want to put in there. This is something new that I've not done before. Who am I? I don't know. I don't know that I can answer that question. Who am I? This is really, really scary. I don't think I am. Great. Fantastic. You're just in an emotional wave. It's all it is. Give yourself a little bit of time with that, feeling like that, feeling that inadequacy. But don't do anything with it. That's the trick that I think most of us, and that's where the self-trust comes in. I trust that I don't have to micromanage my emotions,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. This is the bus coming back for me,
Yeah.
right? And so for new listeners, we talk about, right, that we're all made up of parts. And for me, my parts are always these kids on a school bus. And me, myself, my true self is the driver, hopefully, most of the time. But occasionally there's another part of me, another kid who jumps into the driver's seat and thinks they're doing a great job moving the bus forward. But most of the time it's juice boxes and bologna sandwiches that are being thrown around. And, as you're talking, it's like, absolutely. Like it's like each one of these kids is each one of these emotions. Right. And that it's like sometimes an emotion absolutely jumps into the driver's seat and like feels like it's driving the bus. And it's like, okay. And I am an adult sitting here with the kids throwing their sandwiches around. I get to walk up to the kid in the driver's seat and say, get back there, right? It's my turn to drive. And that's exactly what I saw when you were talking. It was like, yeah, sometimes my emotions do carry me away, and I get to step back in. I get to say, hey, like it's time for me to drive the bus. I appreciate you, and your place is in the back of the bus.
I had such a visceral reaction to you saying, put the emotion in the back of the bus.
Right, but it's
You
not
put the
like
emotion in the butt.
yeah, but it's not like I'm pushing it down. It's not like I've put up the plexiglass protector around
Yeah.
the driver and nobody can come in. And it's not like me saying it's not okay. Well, sometimes I yell at them to, settle down and stop throwing bologna sandwiches, but most of the time people are having a good time in the back of the bus. Right? And so it's not like, "Hey, I'm pushing it down and sit down, shut up." Right? Like the bus driver I used to have, was like, "You didn't say a thing when you
Bill
got
the
on that
bus
bus."
driver. I loved my bus driver.
Mine was mean.
I was not.
One of mine was mean. Yeah, but for me, it's about like just being in control. Just saying like, and maybe I'm sitting over there saying, "You know what? I'm tired of driving. You can drive for a little while." Like that's okay too. But I'm in control of the bus and what's going on.
So interesting. So I mean, we've obviously used this analogy for years that we've known each other because right, this has come up many many times, and I love that it keeps coming up. And it is interesting because this time I'm like, no. And I think it's just where I've evolved in terms of not just my own connection with my emotions, but also how I've seen working with my clients that word control when it comes in. And I'm not saying this is 100% what you're saying. This was my response to what you're saying, which is my own emotional response, right? This is, and there's nothing wrong. I want to preface this as well before I go any further into what I think and believe. There is zero wrong with what you just said. That is your experience, and that honor that I honor that for you.
100%, but I'm super curious what you're going to say. Like, come on.
Yeah. So totally wrong for me because if I see myself as, and while I do very much love the internal family systems system, and it's as a therapeutic tool, it has been incredibly helpful for me to deal with some past trauma. The way I have evolved with my own emotions, and again, the way that I work with many of my clients is that it is a collective versus anybody in control. And so it is whatever part of the wave I'm in, it's not ever just one emotion. It's always, a grouping that is coming together almost like a subcommittee and saying, this just needs a little bit more attention right now. And then it will go back into, it'll either dip down into a different subcommittee or it'll come back to a place where the collective is operating together. But there's not me as the central point, it's me as the collective point. And that has allowed me to go through those ups and downs of emotional waves that we all experience in ways that I don't ever feel like I'm quote unquote out of control. And so that's right. It's like, okay, you can go sit down now. Thank you for your help. I appreciate that. Right. Go play with your friends in the back. And now I'm back in control.
Mm.
Feels very, I'm like, but you were always in control.
Yeah, but the illusion is that I'm not. So me coming back to myself very much is me, believing that I belong in the driver's seat,
And I don't disagree with that.
right?
And for me, the way that I have experienced that is to say we are moving forward together versus because I don't sit around talking about myself as we, but in this context, if I'm thinking about this, it would be all of us, all of my emotions, all of those sensations that I'm experiencing. It is all interconnected, and it is never about me being in control. But this is also my process, my growth, trusting myself around the concept of control and how I have experienced control in my life and how I've seen control in the world. Control to me has a very different connotation that I don't want associated or affiliated with my experience in the world. Like I'm not trying to wrest control out of from anyone else, nor do I want to have anybody take mine from me. Thinking about the concept of empowerment. If we are all empowered, right? If every single human being comes from a place of empowerment, there is no need for that type of control. And so that's my own experience with control and therefore my own emotional response to thinking about controlling any
Sure.
aspect of
Sure.
self. Yeah.
Absolutely, right? And so it's interesting, right? Because these words, this language
Because
that
we're
comes
always
from our
limited by words.
heads, we are talking about words, but the words come from here, our heads, and you had a visceral reaction from our body, right?
Yeah.
And so again, it's always interesting how that plays. And as you're talking about it, it's very much like when I am feeling the most empowered, I'm driving the bus, right? So that's how it plays out for me. That's how I um that's how I want to continue to show up
Yeah.
as the driver.
And I love that for you
Yeah.
because, again, what it means to you is different than what it means to me. And we both have to trust ourselves on our own paths because well, we have so much in common. And while there is a lot of love between the two of us and a lot of respect between the two of us, we are also two very different individuals with two very different experiences in the world. And I like learning to trust ourselves in that and in this relationship. I mean, we've talked about this a few times is we've shared over the years. We've shared a little bit about our relationship and about how we've grown individually as we grow together. And that's one of the things like in this conversation of saying, not that it would have ever been hard for us to say that we were different here, and for us to say we're different and we both individually know how to trust ourselves because we've done the work, we're doing the work, we're continuing the work.
Right.
To say, what does it mean for me to trust the wisdom of my own body and the wisdom of my mind so that I can keep showing up, either driving the bus or in this collective spirit, whatever it is.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good stuff. So we started by laughing and then talking about this myriad of feelings that we were both holding in this moment. And we got to this place of self-trust and like inner wisdom,
Hmm.
which to me has been a really fascinating little roller coaster. Talking about that emotional wave. But what are some of the things that were brought up today that you really would love to either take with you or make sure that people are taking with them?
Yeah, the thread of our conversation has been about self-trust. How do you nurture it? How does it grow within you? What does it feel like? What does it need? It's more like a garden, right? It's not a thing. There's many things that it needs. And we've talked about only a few of them here today, right? Around a little bit around understanding, about honoring, about respecting, right? Your emotions, your feelings, not having feelings about feelings, but also understanding a little bit about like who you are and what you need internally. If it's a driver of a bus or a collective, right, group inside you, it's all about practicing and building on that. It's about, you're not going to, you might not get the garden growing right away, but once you start to understand what different plants need, what different things need, your garden starts to grow and be very fruitful. And then that feeds the rest of us, right? It feeds all parts of us when we can do that. But we're our own gardeners. We've got our own different climates, different soil conditions. Like we're all starting with different kinds of seeds. And so I think it's just in that recognition is really kind of slowing down to understand like what is it that I need to grow self-trust? Because it all starts from there, right? Like his self-trust is the garden and feeds us.
Yeah. Your timing is beautiful because when this episode comes out, the weekend before this comes out is the season of Imbolc, which is the time of planting seeds. So I love that you're sharing that right now because that's absolutely the right season for this. Whatever season somebody comes across this episode, it's an invitation to how to plant those seeds. Before we hit record, we were talking about a project you're working on. And it's not lost on me either. Not just that you're talking about planting seeds in the season of Imbolc, but also that for us to even notice our garden, we are invited to set down that which is not ours. And it's necessary for us to set down which is not ours to be able to see and to tend appropriately to our own gardens. And the more we do that, the more fruit we can bear, the more fruit we can share with each other and the world. But it is not my responsibility to come tend your garden, nor is it your responsibility to tend mine. That's called mutual aid when we support each other. But it's not like we need to do our own work. We can't do it for somebody else fully. We can support it, but we can't
Yeah,
do it
yeah.
fully.
Yeah. We can go to farmer conventions or whatever they call
100%.
them, right? And like be together with other farmers and talk about like what's your garden like and kind of seeds you have and like all that kind of stuff. But you're right. We all have to do our own work. We all have to tend our own garden. And we all have to figure that piece out on our own.
Yeah. I love a good co-op. So, I'll see you at the
Co-op. That's
co-op.
what I was thinking. Like,
And yes, as we are each tending our own soil, and tending to our own gardens and meeting each other at the co-ops, right? Finding out what each other needs. That is how we continue to be present with ourselves, trust ourselves, and then relearn how to trust each other, because we live in a world where far too many of us are learning to distrust each other. And I truly believe that trust with others starts with trust for ourselves. On that note, my dear, anything else you want to share into the world right now?
no, I'm gonna say no. I want to just end this episode as a gift, right? That people take what they need and leave the rest behind today.
Yeah, I second that. Absolutely. Well, have a wonderful week ahead, and I look forward to our next conversation.
Yeah, me as well. Thanks, listener. Enjoy your harvest.
Take care, everyone.
Bye for now.
And that's all for this week's episode of the Empowered and Embodied Show. We hope today's episode has sparked something within you. Remember, we're all on this journey together. If something did resonate with you today, why not share it with a friend who might need to hear it too? You can find us everywhere you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're feeling generous, leave a review. Your feedback not only helps others find the show, but also helps us understand what's most valuable to you. Until next time, be kind to yourself, stay curious, and remember, we're walking right alongside you. Thanks for being part of our community.